If you ask practitioners how many times they're dealing with, well, this isn't covered, but that's the best thing for you, or
Mhm.
it's such a game. And they're juggling a lot. So it's like I have empathy for our practitioners. And I think that's really our secret sauce as diabetics is learn what works for you and bring it to your practitioner because they might not know, but if you come prepared to have these conversations, it could go so much further.
Welcome to the Reclaim Your Rise podcast. My name is Lauren Bongiorno, nationally board certified health coach and founder and CEO of Risely Health, where we help people and families impacted by type 1 diabetes take ownership over their lives so that they can transform with more freedom and confidence. Everyone has a different reason to be here. You might be seeking knowledge, support, or community, but at your core, I know that you long for something deeper. You're here for transformation. And that's what the Reclaim Your Rise podcast is all about. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reclaim Your Rise. I am really excited for you to listen to today's episode with none other than Danica Collins, also known as Danica the Diabetic across social media platforms. This was a conversation I was fully engaged in. I just really enjoyed speaking with Danica. And I think what makes and what has made it truly special is her unique perspective. It bridges, number one, her personal lived experience with type 1 diabetes, with number two, her insights into the back end of healthcare operations, and three, a deep understanding of scientific research and behavioral dynamics, and also just what's going on in like the biotech industry. So, really, just merging all of that together, you have just so much respect for her experience and insights that she shares. And throughout our discussion, you'll hear about Danica's unwavering advocacy for diversity and health equity, delving into her recent journey to Africa, the evolving landscape of diabetes care, and the exciting prospects of technological advancements in AI in this field. She was diagnosed at 14, is a scientist, a national board certified health coach, and a senior consultant where she guides major health systems and hospitals towards greater efficiency and excellence in patient care. So there is no shortage of just education and takeaways that you'll have at the end of this. So without further ado, help me welcome my guest and new friend, Danica Collins, and let's rise. Danica, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is such a selfish episode, I feel like, recording because I am just looking forward to spending more time with you. You and I had I think we only had like a 30-minute call like the first time we met about a month ago. And I was like, all right, we have to either have a follow-up conversation because we had so much to talk about, or you can just come on the podcast and we can talk and other people can also listen to the conversation.
Yes, we definitely vibed and I'm so just excited to dive in and talk more. We could probably talk for days.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why don't we start off with the anchor question that I ask everyone? Type 1 diabetes usually gives Rise a bad reputation with rise in A1C, rise in CGM graph, but here what we do is we're helping people reclaim their rise to rise above their diagnosis and our limitations. So, is there a story that you can share with our community of a time that you reclaimed your rise with type 1 diabetes?
Yes, I think my biggest time I reclaimed my rise is I was an adult, an official adult living in Chicago, but I was having major absorption issues with my insulin pump. I just wasn't getting insulin. I went through several different doctors and they're like, I think you're allergic to your Novolog. Let's switch you to Humalog. And I was like, I don't think I'm allergic to this. I think I'm just not getting it. And I learned how to advocate for myself and rise above just being told you're this, you're that. And from that, I even found a different insulin that worked for me. I found a way to manage my diabetes in my own way, not just what I was told. So I was
Mhm.
able to rise above the status quo and meeting numbers. I was able to rise and able to figure out how to like unleash my life as a diabetic in a way that worked for me. So
Mhm.
that was switching to my inhalable insulin, taking pump breaks, and realizing that hey, I'm not allergic, and it's really odd to be allergic. There's something else going on, and I was able just to rise and empower myself to ask the right questions and to seek the right solutions for myself rather than just relying on the status quo because I had diabetes.
I think advocating is something that everyone can agree is beneficial. especially in the healthcare setting. And yet there's definitely some people who have challenges doing that. And I think it's not really diabetes related, but more personality related. And just, there are people who are more vocal about their needs and kind of going off the beaten path and saying, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And there are other people from, childhood that they're just, I'm always going to follow the rules. With you as a child and just your personality, like who you grew into, were you somebody who was always like beating to your own drum, like I'm going to figure this out myself? Or like, can you share a little bit about you and your personality?
Yes, my personality is absolutely wild spirit, adventurous. I'm gonna figure it out my own. My mom was telling me a story recently about how we did the mom and me swimming classes, and I was 2, and I was like, I already know how to swim, and I went and jumped off like the 10-foot high dive, and just was like, I know how to do it. I did not, but it was one of those things. Like if it's something that I think I can do, like my personality's go, just go for
Mhm.
it. Maybe think about it later. Sometimes it bites me a little bit, but that's my personality.
When were you diagnosed and what was that diagnosis like for you?
I was diagnosed at 14, and it was really a blur because I was just, this isn't real. I didn't know what diabetes was. I didn't
Mm.
care. I was injured, so I hurt my ankle in a basketball game and I had a big tournament coming up. So I was on crutches for a week and I was going to the doctor to get clearance to play. And I got the clearance to play, but then I also got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And they were like, "You need to go to the hospital." I was like, "No, I need to go to my basketball tournament." Like, this is, what do you mean? I was just complete teenager, maybe in denial now that I'm reflecting a bit. I was like, "No," and I didn't know what it was. I said, "Mom, I don't have time for cancer." And she's like, "You don't have cancer." And that was just, I understood, I was did what I was told to a T, but it was not a priority in my life.
Mm. Did your family and your support system, did they understand the weight of it? And then you kind of just were in this teenage rebellious, or not even rebellious, but like, I'm just going to keep doing my life. Like, this isn't going to stop me phase. Or did your family not really know the true weight of it either?
I don't think they knew the true weight of it, but I had such a village. I lived in an area where a lot of my friends and close family friends were in the medical field. And my
Mm.
mom says we all got diagnosed that day. So we all went through all the education, we went through everything. And I just remember everyone coming to visit me in the hospital, even some family friends that worked at the hospital. Like I feel like everyone in the whole city knew I was diagnosed with diabetes, and there was no way to like not tell anyone about it because everybody knew and they were concerned, but helpful more so is like really a sense of love for my community. But
Mm.
that as a 14-year-old, I'm like, I don't want everyone in my business. I don't want them like asking if I how my blood sugar is, seeing if I check my blood sugar, ask if I need a snack. Like sleepovers, everyone just got prepared or like they read up on it. So I don't think everyone knew the weight, but everyone figured it out together. And like my parents did a lot, but I was on my own. I was pretty independent already as a 14-year-old. I was traveling for basketball, I was traveling for track, I was doing all these things. So I had to know the basics and I know I had to learn how to keep myself alive, which I did quickly, but it didn't mean I wanted everyone in my business about it.
There's something that you put in an Instagram video that you made, which I loved. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to remember to ask her about this. You said, I wasn't given options when I was diagnosed, I was given a bunch of don'ts. Can you expand on that and why that's something that you remember so distinctly about the diagnosis?
Yes, I have this invincible era around me. So I'm like, what do you mean I can't? You don't do this. I just remember the nutritionist coming in and just saying, no, 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 don't do this. You can't eat that. You can't do this. You need to give yourself this insulin. You can only eat 15 carbs. And I was like, what is she talking about? And it's like, you can't exercise this much. You can't do this. You can't have time without your pump. And it was just a list of no, no, no. And it wasn't like the explanation of the why. And
Mm.
hey, you can't do it this way, but you might want to do it that way. It wasn't realistic to me. It was just a list of nope, don't do that. Your life is over. And it wasn't a list of, hey, here's how you manage. Here's how you do things. Here's how you make informed decisions on your health.
So that is something that I'm very passionate about speaking, about. And I love that you're a nationally board certified health coach as well, that we could have this conversation and really understand that like people have to feel empowered and understand like like in order to increase their self-efficacy and their belief that they can do something, they have to be armed with the right resources and tools. And if there are gaps, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And at the same time, the healthcare system really isn't set up to be able to, teach you everything that you need to know in that first, not even just first day, but even just like the first months in those appointments, because it's very much like putting out fires and just making sure like, hey, when you're low, you do not give insulin. Like when you're high, you give insulin. When you're low, you treat it. So for you, is that something where, I guess, was that the fuel to eventually go and work in helping to improve hospitals and systems and, become a health coach? Like, was that a direct tie? Like, what was that journey like?
I realized how complicated healthcare is and how it's so easy to get lost in the shuffle.
Mhm.
And there isn't the time, there isn't the person, there isn't someone that's living the life that you're living. They're just I'm a scientist by trade. I was in grad school next to med students, next to nurse practitioners and PAs. And it's like, you're just given textbook type of stuff. And I spent so many years going back to my grad school teaching with one of my professors a lot on diabetes, but really seeing that just because it says this in a book doesn't mean that it's practical. It doesn't mean that you're set up for success. And I think that's a flaw in our healthcare system. And that really did drive my passion into getting into this career. I didn't plan this. I actually wanted to be a dentist, but
Oh, really?
so many things kind of fell into place, and like I finally feel like I'm living in my true purpose, and all of my little puzzle pieces came together with health systems, with digital health, with health coaching, and just being an advocate for diabetes. It all just ties in. And it's super convoluted as well because I'm now seeing in the hospitals people are given a CGM when they're diagnosed, all different types. And it's super big. But now like I'm at conferences speaking and I'm seeing people from Dexcom or Abbott, and it's super cool to kind of see my worlds collide.
Hmm.
But when I'm in these hospitals, I'm getting asked questions about my personal experience. I'm getting asked, well, how does this tech, how does this work? Because when you're thinking about it from a hospital standpoint, you normally have sales reps come in, show you how to use the machines, show you to do these things, but it's different when it comes to diabetes. And our tech advances so quick. There's no way for any practitioners that aren't specialists that are like really nerded out on this to keep up with everything that goes on in the diabetes space.
That's, I think about that a lot. I heard a quote somewhere, and I'm going to botch the quote, but I'll give you the general idea because I don't remember exactly what it said, but I remember the impact it made where I was like, wow, that's like an extended period of time. But it was something along the lines of when journals come, when there's published data that comes out, right? Or let's say, there's new guidelines, right? That for that to be taught in medical school, there's like a multi-year gap. It could be 5 years later, 6 years later, that is taught in medical school. So there's such a delay, or really just like prevention of being able to move at the pace that 64,000 people getting diagnosed per year just in the US with diabetes need to be able to, have a better experience from the time they're diagnosed onwards.
Yes, and it's huge, and, like, in medical school and any of these professional schools, you're not given business courses, you're not given insurance courses, and if you ask practitioners how many times they're dealing with, "Well, this isn't covered, but that's the best thing
Mm.
for you," or "This is" it's such a game, and they're juggling a lot, so it's like, I have empathy for our practitioners, and I think that's really our secret sauce as diabetics is learn what works for you and bring it to your practitioner because they might not know, but if you come prepared to have these conversations, it could go so much further.
Mhm. And even just you gave examples earlier, and this is more specifics, but you had said, I learned that I want to use an insulin pump and I want to have inhalable insulin and I want to take a pump break and have the ability to like maneuver that. There's probably health care professionals that are like, hey, that's not a good idea, or, we're only going to prescribe you one thing. Like, how did you find what worked for you? Like, for somebody listening who's like, I want to be able to advocate, but I don't even know what I need to advocate for.
Yes, it was trial and error, and I brought the research. I researched and I was like, okay, like one, I met other people online or in person who were using something, and I was like, oh, that's what a CGM is. That seems resourceful. I thought it was just something else I had to wear.
Mm,
And I educated myself enough to have a conversation to say, hey, I do think this will work for me. And it might be different because here's one thing I don't think a lot of people know traditionally how practitioners would know like if they're going to have a Medtronic or an different type of pump in their thing, it became on who their sales reps were and who they allowed in their office. It wasn't about the education. It's really a whole different business pharmaceutical scheme, and that's old healthcare. Some of that still happens, but it's that physician's preference. So you you might have to educate. It's not that they don't know or it's just what they're used to. And they're like,
mhm,
I know how to use this pump. I know how to use an Omnipod. I know how to use a CGM. But now with the volume of diabetics coming, like that isn't acceptable anymore. And people are being pushed. But you also have to come and be prepared. So if you're starting this, you're like, hey, like, I really don't like my pump. I'm almost up for my warranty, or I want to try something that's tubeless, or I want to have a smart pen. Ask, say, hey, I heard there's a smart pen. And I thought now that it's smart, like I can see how much insulin I'm giving. You'll be able to see it too. Is this something I
mhm,
can try? Do you have a sample in your office?
mhm,
And the sample piece, everyone loves samples, but if you start from that softer approach, it's like I want to try it, give it a try. I'm not abandoning what I'm doing, but I want to try something else, and let's have a trial period.
mhm. Well, that what I'm hearing too is it should be a partnership with your healthcare team. It should be a conversation. And if you do get pushback, it's like you either have to push back a little harder and say, like, no, 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 I'm not asking you, what you prefer. This is what I prefer, and this is what I want, or, finding another provider that can support you in that decision. Because I know we have plenty of members at Risely that are like, I want to be on XYZ system. I want to be on Tandem or Medtronic or Omnipod. My doctor's just telling me like, oh no, like you just this is what, I recommend. And it's like, okay, that's what you recommend, but this is what I want. I think the challenge is, I don't know how you feel about this, but diabetes is exhausting, baseline enough, right? And then to go and do all of the research, it's like, when you have just like personal, like you're trying to juggle work and personal, and you have this like laundry list of things to do on your personal. It's like, do the laundry, go run this errand, get the, put gas in your car. And also call the insurance and do research on, the pumps. And it's just like this extra things to do that I think that's one of the reasons why people don't necessarily want to move forward with, finding the best possible options or taking time to, on a more intimate level, learn their patterns because they're like, I'm overwhelmed and I can't even have that space to do that. So I'm curious from your standpoint, what is the benefit of doing that? Because I think that if you can hear the benefit of it, you're more incentivized to be like, okay, like that's worth spending my time because I want to be eventually in that place on the other side, like Danica is.
Yes, and for me, it really came down to I don't want diabetes to limit me. I want to feel my best every day. So whatever I need to do to get there, I will do it. And once you kind of hit that point, it's not another thing on your to-do list. It's, hey, I want to live. I want to live freely. I want to live in my most empowering self. And I think this is going to help me get there because it's
Mhm,
not just about the medication. It's not just about seeing your blood sugars. It's so much more. It's this holistic approach to living. And you can live with diabetes. We're two testaments of that. You can do anything that you want, but you have to prepare for it. So
mhm,
once you have a mindset shift, rather than, hey, I'm tired, I don't like this. Half the reason you're probably tired is because your blood sugar's crappy.
yeah,
And you might not have the best solution. So it's understanding that it might be rough for a little bit, but at the end of the journey, the grass is there. You're there. You're going to have these opportunities. But the problem is once you start, you can't stop. diabetes is evolving, our tech is evolving, your body is evolving. So it's not just a one-time thing. And I think that's what people get wrong. It's like, "Oh, I changed something right, like, once, I'm good." It doesn't
Yeah.
work like that, unfortunately.
Right, like, that would be nice, like, check box for the rest of my life, I'm good on my, my insulin to carb ratio. It is, and that's why it is the mindset that I believe is so under, um talked about, or that is the piece that to me is the foundational element for everything else to be built upon. Like if you're sitting in your doctor's appointment and they're talking to you about changing insulin to carb ratios, or what pump you want, or asking all these questions, and at a foundational level you don't even want to make space for diabetes in your life, and you're not even at a place to be like slightly energized by the idea of being able to live a more energized, peace of mind, confident life, you're not going to be receptive to that. You're just going to maybe be energized for a little bit, but then a week later be like, okay, once again, I can't stick to anything, or, I guess I'll wait to next appointment to find that motivation. So that mindset piece,
Mhm.
has to be there. And especially for when things go wrong. So I know that you took a trip recently, you were in Africa, I think pretty like last week, right?
Yes.
Like, very, very recent, and
Yes.
some things went wrong, and we were just talking before about, like, if it's gonna go wrong, it's gonna go wrong at the worst possible time. So, what was that like when you were, you know, out of the country, off of the continent, and experiencing a lot of challenges with your diabetes, and how you navigated that?
Well, there's a little background. When things got really bad, I was on a like 9-mile hike to a village to see if we could do some health clinics. I'm in the jungle. It's like 100 and something degrees. And I noticed that like my sensor isn't working. And I'm looking and it's just like dangling off my arm. And I'm like, like I don't have anything on me. And I wasn't just by myself, like, I had to continue the journey. So, I didn't have another meter, I didn't have my meter on me. This was like an excursion on part of, like, this trip I was on. So, I wasn't even going back to my main house where I had, like, a ton of my extra stuff. I only had 1 extra, CGM with me. So,
Oh, no.
I had to finish this 9-mile hike in, and this happened, like, halfway in. And I had to go have these meetings in this village and then hike back. And I'm just like, "What happened?" And that was the circumstances were insane, but that was, like, the easiest part of my mishap. And I think the other crazy part is once I did it, like, I sent switched my CGM, middle of the night, it says, "Can't read." It's like, "Out of country error." And I was like, "What? We have an out of country error?" Because this is on my Dexcom G7. I never had these issues with my G6. So and I reach out to tech support and it's like, "We'll get back to you in 48 hours." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to do because I only have so many CGMs with me." So I had to just say, "Hey, tech is great, but it's not always gonna be accessible." So I had to go back to my basics, really listen to my body, and just have backup plan A, B, and C. And luckily, I flew across the world with A, B, and C, but I had to just get really strategic. And for my last like week in Africa, like I was winging it with a lot of my just manual things, or my CGM was like halfway working with only my pump and not my um, actual app. So it was having the tech was good, but I was like, I can't even see it. And it was very humbling in this fact because it's like I'm in an area where there's nothing. People don't have basic water and needs. And I'm over here like upset that my CGM isn't working. Like in
Mindset
perspective,
shifted.
I'm just
First.
like, I'm good. And there's diabetics in these countries. I'm like, this is so different. It is so, so different. So, one, I learned something. Is like, I want to tell everyone the story because I don't even have a full answer on this, how to do this when you're in a different country. It's not your country of residence. And that's just a whole other thing. I'm like, I'm working with Dexcom. I understand their solution now, but it's like, there needs to be a better solution down the line.
Mm,
And also, it's like, remember your basics. I think the foundations of diabetes, like with a lot of my clients, I'm like, hey, know your foundations. Like, learn how to know how to do your diabetes without any tech because you never know when you're going to have to do that. And sometimes it's good. It's good to just do that, to stay refreshed because sometimes you just need to be bare with it. You don't want any of the tubes, you don't want anything stuck to you, and you need to have the basics.
Well, I think thank you so much for sharing that story. And it's very like representative of real life. I've also been in those situations too many times than I would have preferred. But with that, it's why I think a lot of people don't travel or hold themselves back because they're afraid of being outside of the routine and not feeling confident in their ability to navigate that. And so, one of my favorite things to see is people getting to a more confident place with their numbers and their management and their this and their that so that they can say, I'm going to book that trip that I've been wanting to, book. And I'm going to like go do whatever it is, skydiving or this or that, because I know that I'm equipped to handle that. And there's two different versions of living, I believe, with diabetes not holding you back. One is I'm not going to let diabetes hold me back. So I'm not going to really like prioritize it. I'm kind of going to like put it in the back seat. That will give you freedom in the short term, but it's going to pile up, and compound over time. And you're going to eventually have to address that. Or the other side is spend the time working on yourself, knowing your body's patterns, learning it, which gives you freedom forever, period. With that, you said that there's, and we know this, but there's obviously people in Africa and a lot of underserved communities within the US, even that have diabetes and don't have access to tech. I'm curious with your work in Africa or your, knowledge, what is that lived experience like for somebody who doesn't have the best access to care?
And it really depends because, like, in these underserved areas, the culture's so different. Like, you have people that are literally in tribes, and they might have a health clinic come every quarter. So it is just getting access, or they're traveling by foot or by bus or by things for days to get access to care. And it might just be like, hey, here's a vial of insulin. Or there's a couple organizations that go into some of these places, but it it's completely different. So it's a different struggle,
Hmm.
and it's a different even type of living with diabetes. It is you might not be able to get your medication. You might just only have your diet. You might only have your lifestyle, which is scary to think about. But if you're diagnosed and your closest hospital is 3 or 4 hours away, like, what do you do? Or if you can't go, if you can't afford it? So I know that there's hospitals in some of these countries, there's other, medical missions that are going on, but that's really the access pieces because people are dying. Like, that's the end result. People are dying because they don't have not just tech, they don't have access to the basics for diabetes or even true diagnosis.
Right, right. I was just going to say true diagnosis. And also, so I'm Peruvian. My grandpa was born in Peru and came here when he was 16. And Coach Neil on our team, I was talking to him, and he has done before mission trips to go to Peru and give not just like access to technology, it's like you said, access to just education. Because he said there's so many people in certain communities that they think insulin's like bad. Like they have this like and I can't remember the details exactly, but it was essentially he was saying like people are afraid to take insulin, like they don't understand what it is. Is that
Mhm.
something you've heard of too?
Yes, and even in the type 2 communities over there, they're like, "Well, it just dropped me and I felt bad. I don't wanna
Mhm.
do this." Or, "Is this evil? Is this something bad?" Like, the level of understanding and
Mm.
education is a bigger hoop there in other places, and a lot of it's like if you have a nutritionist or someone coming on a medical mission saying, "Hey, don't eat this, this, and this," that's insulting their culture. That's insulting heritage, and it's not well received. And I think it's just you can't when you're doing these type of trips or experiences, like, you have to really have empathy and put yourself in these other situations and figure out that our way here might not be the best way, but help them feel empowered to learn how to educate the best in their communities and how to
Mm.
access other basics care because it's not just insulin that they can't get, it's water, it's shelter, it's all these other things. So it's on the totem pole of needs, like diabetes might not be the biggest need for some of these communities.
Right. And looking at the, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's that like base level, like you said, water, shelter, like insulin is what like relationship to insulin and also education. Like that's just, they're not even really probably a lot of them worried about thriving with diabetes. They're just like, how do we get more people probably out of DKA and stop, and not dying from
Mhm.
type 1. So your work in the hospital system and helping hospitals operate more efficiently, and your also passion and background of being a national board certified health coach, like the coaches at on the Risley team. I'm curious about your perspective in a future that integrates coaching into hospitals, clinics, specifically for diabetes. That's Risley's mission and vision and what we're working towards. And I respect your opinion because you have both the corporate side and also the personal lived experience and the coaching understanding of the value of that.
Yeah, so this is really what inspired me outside of our community to become a coach. I was working with a health system in the Pacific Northwest, and they started hiring health coaches, and putting it a part of their like business plan as their continuum of care plans. And I was like, this is a future. It was a very progressive health system, but I'm like, this makes all the sense in the world. This is something that I've been passionate about, but it's happening. It's not happening everywhere. But I think people are understanding the need for real proactive long-term health, maintaining healthy choices, and really the lifestyle piece is
Mhm.
not going to happen in the hospital walls all the time. You have to have all these other things. I think health coaching, I like to explain it as like people are like, oh, what's the difference between therapy and health coaching? I was like, therapy is for past. Coaching is for future and your present. And if you want to have a healthy future and a healthy right now, partnering with a coach is one of the best things you can do. If you were diagnosed with diabetes and you're trying to navigate, okay, like you can't change everything in one day. But if you're making these smart goals and you're incorporating it into your check-ins and your doctor, it's not just relying on your endo or your primary care, you're having the additional support, it can go such a long way. And I know that's a lot of the work that you're doing at Risley. And I'm excited for the future with this because it's happening, not just in diabetes, it's happening across the industry. And
Mhm.
there's an organization that I partner with and just other things, and they're putting the needs out there. They're working with a lot of the health plans already to include this as an employee benefit.
I
So
that
on the opposite side of our part of healthcare outside of just the health system, there's other angles bringing it to an access standpoint because we all know that insurance rules the world in a lot of places, but there are partnerships happening there. This need is being out there. There's data, there's research coming, and it's not just diabetes, it's looking across everything. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next probably 3 to 5 years. I think
Mm.
I'm going to say 10 years, hopefully reimbursement will happen. But in some places, Medicaid and Medicare are already reimbursing for health coaching. And I think it's just going to be the new part of the standard.
I mean, that's the vision, right? And to your point about helping people move forward, I think sometimes we think and we get frustrated within ourselves of like, I don't understand. I know what I need to do, but like I just can't, put it in place. And that's just behavior change, right? And that's what our specialty is like helping you get from point A to point Z and having that accountability, helping you get through those mindset blocks, changing, behavior modification and using tools and strategies that, are proven to work. And so it's we were talking on our team the other day. We were trying to come up with, we were having a lot of like team workshops, and we were like, what is like everybody has with type 1 diabetes different problems that they're struggling with. But like at the core, like what is the centralized problem? Danica, we spent 4 hours talking about it. Literally, I mean, we had the time, like already accounted for. Like it was a whole day workshop, but 4 hours, and it was like so meta, where it was like the problem is that the problem you can't even define the problem because it's so big and it's so large and it's so multifaceted. But I think from the outside, people struggle to realize that type 1 diabetes is not just take insulin or eat carbs when you're low or eat sugar when you're low. It is so much about lifestyle, and to your point, the holistic elements of the sleep and the stress and the relationship to all aspects of insulin, food, diabetes, your diagnosis, all of that. And it's just like you can expect that to be solved in the four walls of a hospital because it is so deep for a lot of people and so deep rooted.
Yes, and it's constantly changing. Like any stressor, stress is like the worst thing for diabetes, but your environment can be a stress. Your what your access to your community, all these things are changing all the time. So that's really where I think coaching, it's like we're not here to give you a list of don'ts. We're here,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, what is your goal? How can we support you as you get to it? What resources do you need? It really is that accountability and that's that partnership, which I think is the glue. And because you don't get that in your 20-minute doctor's appointment. And if
Mhm.
you have access to email or messaging in their healthcare platform, yes, you can get some questions asked. But if you're really wanting to make those tiny habit changes for this lifestyle and really this holistic management, that's the bread and butter of coaching.
Mhm. And I mean, I've been reading I don't know if have you seen the updated 2024 standards of care from the ADA?
Yes.
So we have one of our advisory board members was like, I'll share with you the like distilled down version. I'm like, oh, I'm already 300 pages into like the actual
Yep.
manual. Thank you so much. But I really wanted to read it, and I found it fascinating that there's only 7 pages. There's 7 pages dedicated to the like social elements of diabetes and like the mental health pieces. And I'm
Mhm.
so glad that they address it and talk about things like diabetes distress and the anxiety that can be, present with especially just like, CGMs and all of that, and talks about and addresses it. But it's 7 pages out of 350,
Yep.
I think. So it's not like, you know, our providers are not being trained on the things that we want. It's just that they have a hierarchical, like a, priorities and an order of, okay, the insulin and the different tech systems and all these other things. And those other pieces that really for us and our lived experience that feel so big and feel like a missing gap, like have to be outsourced somewhere else.
Yes, and it's like I like to tell people, it's like just because you went to medical school doesn't mean that you can deliver a baby. Yes, you're trained, but if you haven't delivered a baby in 20 years, it's gonna be difficult. You wanna pass the baton. And I think that's really where health partners and practitioners, that really build those networks of like, hey, like you need a nutritionist, you need a health coach, you need someone that specializes in mental health, like building their network to better support their community is key. And I'm seeing that in some places. But I think our diabetes world, our diabetes health and healthcare is evolving, but I think it's rapidly evolving in the diabetes space. And I honestly, it's not because of type 1. It's because of the demand of type 2 and the amount of
Mhm.
pre-diabetics, but it's gonna work in our benefit as well.
Hmm. I mean, I think the stat is half of America, right, is pre-diabetic or type 2, and
Yep.
there's probably a large majority of those that are actually undiagnosed, probably like type 1.5 LADA.
Mhm.
Um, what is the future of diabetes care that you are most excited about? And maybe even something that you think and believe that you could have a direct influence on?
I'm most excited about really integrated care. And I know like this kind of out there, but like a lot of things in the metaverse, a lot of different access points, being able to access specialists and not have to wait months to get in is one of my near future exciting goals because that's happening. It's happening from the private sector, it's happening from the public sector. And I think that's the biggest gap. If you're like, you shouldn't have to wait or be limited because your insurance only covers you to see your endo so many times a year. Um, and I think the changes in how billing is happening and the needs and seeing different levels of providers is an immediate thing I'm excited about. And I think some of the research that's been going down, I haven't had a direct impact, but I benefited from it. And in the longer term goal, I'm excited to see where tech gives. I don't live in this world of, hey, I'm waiting for a cure. No, like I do clinical studies, I do all these other pieces. Like, no, I want to make living with diabetes easier and more concurrent and just smooth as possible. And I think I will have a direct impact just by continuing with clinical studies, continuing interviewing and building these partnerships with so many of these biotech companies because that is what I went to school for. I do it on the back end really just as something because I'm passionate about, but without having the personal piece to it, I don't think that tech and those advantages really happen. And I don't think if we don't have diversity in these trials, in these conversations, it doesn't service our population.
That's an important point to make. And I think about how tech is obviously moving so fast, and AI is a conversation and the highlight of, a lot of conversations anytime someone brings up, tech. Um, Noom, for example, is a health coaching company. They don't focus on type 1 diabetes or diabetes, specifically, but they laid off about 80% of their coaches last year, I believe it was at some point, maybe
Mhm.
like mid-year. And they switched to, I don't know if it's like fully or majority an AI based coaching platform. And I'm curious where you're really excited about tech and also, once again, have the experience as the coach. And in this conversation, we've talked about how important that, like, the relatability aspect is and the lived experience, where you see AI, even just like coaching, for example, like play a piece, if anything,
I
or your thoughts on it.
I love this stuff because I work with this organization called AI Med, and in healthcare, we're looking at how AI, how generative AI is really going to impact healthcare. Looking at it from a diabetes standpoint, I don't think AI is going to replace healthcare, but you have to get on the bandwagon with it because it's going to enhance it. I don't think this AI coaching piece of it, consumers aren't going to like that forever when you're having these difficult conversations. There's no the human aspect, the relatability is not
Mhm,
there through AI. And AI is fed, it's growing. So the more you put into it, the better it gets. But that still doesn't have that human touch. And one of the
mhm,
biggest things humans need is connection. And you can't get connection through a computer. It can enable you to connect to other people through a computer or through tech, but no, it's not that. I think it can inform your conversations. I think it can inform diagnosis. I think it can speed everything up, but it's not gonna replace someone who it's not gonna replace the doctors. It's not gonna replace your health coaching. Um, and I think it's really gonna be an easy way out. Honestly, like if you're gonna want to have a cheaper option for a coach or a faster option for a coach or something down those things, like yes, you can only hit so many milestones with a computer-based thing.
mhm.
Um, I think the real having someone with the experience, someone that you can really relate to and have a true dialogue where it's empathetic, holistic, and can be specific to where you're at is going to be there. Tech can get very close, but it will not replace the human part of it.
Part of it, right. And I see that's exactly my point of view as well. Very similar, where hopefully AI will help advance the ability to get a message to your doctor, or even just like get a message quicker than you could, if you can't get in touch with your doctor right away. And depending on like how the hospital systems, integrate this or whatnot. But it's that human connection is what more people are craving. And we're essentially saying, oh, well, we're moving as a society actually away from what you need more of and more into, this AI way of communicating. So I think there's going to be pros and cons, just like anything else.
Yep, and if you look at our stats across the country and the world, the anxiety and depression rates are up and loneliness is up. And tech is a big piece of that. But if you take, I think the repercussions of the AI and the speed of tech are going to impact humankind very differently, and it already is.
Mhm.
So I think those who really are forthcoming of it and really want to be a part, they're the people who want people are going to stand for it. The people that want an easy way out are going to easily adapt the tech, but maybe not in the right way. Because right now, from profit margins, a lot of these companies are coming out like, oh, like I can use your glucose monitor and tell you like when you need to do something or when you need to eat and what you can eat. Yes, that's helpful, but I don't need to be told what to do. I need to be empowered to make my own choices.
Mhm.
And that's the missing link.
I'm sitting over here like, yes, that's your TED Talk. No,
Yes.
that's get on a stage and say that. Like that to me is the core piece of where, when you are not in the diabetes day to day or working with people with diabetes, you're almost assuming what the problem is and creating solutions, when it's really, yes, data aggregation is really important and can be helpful to know, okay, when you're sleeping, under 7 hours a night, your insulin resistance is going up and your time in range is going down. But that is only one piece of the puzzle. Now it's once again the behavior modification of like, okay, well, why aren't you sleeping? And what is your stress management like? And what are your patterns? How do you get ahead of this if you're a new time mom and you don't have anything, or a parent and you're like, I don't have a choice. Like I can't sleep more than 4 hours a night or whatever it is. So really interesting conversation. I'm glad I asked you your thoughts on that. Danica, to wrap up, I want to do a little just rapid fire with you. So are you open for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. What what is your insulin management system that you use?
It's a hybrid. So I use Tandem, T-Slim, and I also use a Afrezza inhalable insulin.
Okay. For somebody going on a Afrezza, what is your number one tip?
It is to exhale before you inhale. It helps a lot.
Love that. What is your favorite way to treat a low?
My favorite way to treat a low is with natural sugar, so I love honey.
And lastly, what is one thing that you would tell your newly diagnosed 14-year-old self?
I would tell my newly diagnosed 14-year-old self that you can do this. It's going to be rocky and it's going to be changing, but you are resilient and you can do anything you set your mind to.
Such a good note to wrap on. Danica, thank you so much for joining me. Can you plug yourself? We'll put it in the show notes below, but where can people follow you and your journey?
Yes, you guys can find me on every platform, even YouTube, at Danica the Diabetic. I just put diabetic in my name. It's pretty easy to find. There is another Danica out there. There's 3 Danicas with diabetes. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, but my hashtag and my name is Danica the Diabetic. Please connect with me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, anyway. Message me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
She's everywhere. Thank you so much for your time, your advice, your knowledge, your experience. Really enjoyed this conversation, and I personally can't wait to listen to it back.
Yes, me too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here with me today and listening to this episode of Reclaim Your Rise. To let us know that the episodes we're putting out are impactful, and to help us get our street cred up and let everyone else know that this is something worthy of their time to listen to, please leave a rating and review on our Apple Podcasts, send the show to other people impacted by T1D or maybe even your doctor, and share it on social media tagging at Risley Health and at Lauren_Bongiorno. New episodes of Reclaim Your Rise come out every single Tuesday, so make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so that you never miss a beat. Thanks again for listening, and as always, remember, diabetes is a challenge that we did not choose, but one that we can rise above.